Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Golden Astrologer Podcast. This is Deb McBride, and I am here with you from lovely and beautiful Escazú, Costa Rica, on April 26th in the year 2026. So it is 4/26/26 today. It is a Sunday. It is the last Sunday in April. This is the last week of April. Pretty hard to believe that May is starting this coming Friday. Unbelievable. So, onward with the big news, as you probably already guess if you listen to me regularly, that Uranus has entered Gemini. Now, this happened last night in my region of the world. Maybe it happened for you today, Sunday, if you live in Europe. But it's been an interesting thing because we have been having a year of big transitions, and this is the final big planet transition. Jupiter's going to change signs late June, early July, but Jupiter changes signs once a year. So this is a common thing every year. Uranus doesn't change signs very often. It stepped into Gemini last year for a little bit and then stepped back out into Taurus, finished Taurus last night, and entered Gemini. Wowie, this is huge. I'm going to take a big breath. Breathe with me because this is the final planet to change signs of the three outer planets in Saturn. So this is remarkable because just since late January, we've had Neptune change signs for good, Saturn change signs for good, and now Uranus change signs for good. And then in November of 2024, it was Pluto changing signs for the next 20 years into Aquarius. But this is now complete. We're all set. We're moving forward, and it's a new paradigm, everybody. This is an incredible shift forward, so much at the same time, and it's very powerful. So anyone who has a good deal of Gemini in their chart is going to feel this. If you are a Gemini, or you're like me, you have a Gemini moon, or you have a planet in Gemini like Venus or even Jupiter, you're going to get some dose of Uranus along the way here over the next 7 years. And so this is a complement to Pluto being in Aquarius, because it will be making a trine, a very smooth flowing 120 degree aspect. They are both air signs. We're going to get some nice intellectual energy coming forward. And I want you to know that you can hear me talk about this some more on my blog that I just posted moments before I started recording this podcast. And if you're not on my mailing list, you can go to my website, thegoldenastrologer.com, and a little box will pop up and you can sign up for my mailing list and get my blogs. Don't worry, I don't badger you often. It's not something where I'm writing every day. And, if you are not on my mailing list, you want to look at my blog, you can go to my website, thegoldenastrologer.com, and click at the bottom where it says Astrologer's Thoughts, and it will take you to my blog page where you can read this blog I just posted and also previous blogs that I have posted. So, but join my mailing list and you keep apprised of other things that I'm doing, other classes, stuff like that I'm going to be offering. And you can also purchase from my website, thegoldenastrologer.com. Go click book online. You can purchase the Astrology of 2026, The Rebellion of Fire and Air, and that's $55. And it is the presentation I gave in December about the new year, and I talk at length about Gemini and Uranus and Gemini. And you can hear all about all of those planets that have made changes. So, it's a very interesting look at what 2026 is about. So there are other things going on this week, and it is a quieter week than it has been. I do think that Uranus in Gemini is the star of the week, okay, for the most part, because this is all new territory. And even though it was there for a few months last year, we are really now moving full speed ahead with Uranus and Gemini, and it's going to start changing things. And there was a whole bunch of chaos and excitement in Washington, D.C. last night, and you can go read about that in the news. And if that's any indication of Uranus and Gemini, then we're in for a whole lot of chaos. Though I will say, when I've done my research about this, and I do mention it in my blog, the U.S. has had Uranus and Gemini in three significant wars in its history. So there was the Revolutionary War, there was the Civil War, and there was World War II. Uranus was in Gemini all of those times that the U.S. was involved in a major conflict. So you can read about that in my blog, but I also talk about it in that lecture because the Revolutionary War, when the U.S. colonies gained their independence, there was both Uranus and Gemini and Pluto and Aquarius, as we have right now and we will have for the next 7 years. Pluto's staying longer, as you know, but this is a commonality with the Revolutionary War. So I do talk about it in that lecture, The Astrology of 2026. So you might want to pick that up if you haven't seen it. Now, this week ahead, Venus was moving into Gemini just as Uranus was moving into Gemini. They had a conversation at the end of Taurus, and then Venus went on her way into flirty Gemini, where she is of duality. You know, she's of two minds. And Gemini is a sign that can be frolicking and fun and very witty and funny and charming. And Geminis, you know, often think of things very quickly, and their mind is sharp, and they're quick-witted, etc. So, you know, Venus there is a little more flirtatious, like I mentioned, and she's sharp and quick, and she knows what she wants very quickly. But when she's in Gemini, you know, she doesn't light up the way she does in Taurus. She just goes in and maybe loses interest after she's, you know, done a little bit of investigation and research into something, and just, oh, I like this. No, I think not. Bye. And so this is a risky time to start a love relationship with Venus and Gemini, and you probably want to pay attention to that, like how Venus is behaving right now. It's like the goddess is changing her mind every couple of minutes, and sometimes Venus and Gemini can be a revolving door, especially at the end of Gemini. But in the meantime, Venus can be very creative and have lots of ideas when she's in Gemini. So it's good use of that energy during these next few weeks. She's going to talk to Pluto in Aquarius on Tuesday the 28th. She is making a trine at 12:40 p.m. and that is definitely great for creativity, for a little transformative creativity, for coming up with new ideas. And she's, you know, stepping into that direction with Pluto. You know, she's working with Pluto the way Uranus is going to work with Pluto. And this is something that's only going to happen, you know, when she's in Gemini, and then eventually it'll happen again on the other side when she's in Libra. She'll talk to Pluto in a trine. But this is a very positive, passionate way to use Venus's creativity in Gemini. So I would suggest that this is, you know, something that you can use in this week to get things done, to work on a project, especially if it's an art project or a design project. Certainly Venus and Pluto work well together when they're in a trine in air signs. It gives us ideas, brainy things, thought things, thinking things. And now that Uranus is in Gemini, there's a lot of air flying around the sky. We're no longer, as I say in my lecture, we're no longer in the world of earth and water. You know, there was Neptune in Pisces for 12 years. There was, you know, Pluto in Capricorn, Uranus in Taurus. This was years and years of this, and it's a very plodding energy. This is different. It's very fluid, and, you know, lots of excitement, lots of high energy. So we're working with different parameters now. So that's part of this new direction, new paradigm. We're working with the intellect, and we can't forget about the feelings, though, because we can't process everything through our brains. We have to really feel things, and I'm hoping that's where the fire comes in, because you can feel the passion, the zestiness, and you know, Jupiter is still in water right now, and so that's helping us with the whole feeling into something before we, you know, think and jump, which is fire and air. Think and jump. Think for a second, a split second, and then just jump right in. Don't think thoughtfully, just think quickly. And I'm joking, of course, but you want to feel into something before you take action, before you speak. And so it's always good to pay attention to your feelings before you launch into something. And I hope that the fire brings lightness and some passion and zestiness to anything we are embarking on over these next couple of years. So tomorrow, the 27th, is a void moon for the entire day. So like last Monday, a void moon for the entire day. Tomorrow it will start at 7:12 a.m. after the moon in Virgo makes a nice aspect to Jupiter in Cancer. It's a sextile, so there's some nice fluid energy there with Jupiter and the moon. But 7:12 a.m. Eastern time, it will go void. And then it's not going into the next sign, which is Libra, until the next morning. And that's going to be 5:03 a.m. Eastern time. And that's 22 hours of void moon. Now, this is part of Uranus entering Gemini as well. When planets are not at the end of a sign, if we don't have something like we've had Uranus at the end of Taurus for a long time. And when planets are not at the end of a sign, and they're all at the beginning of a sign, which is what we've got now, everybody's in the beginning of a sign, the moon, when it's talking to the other planets, talks to them early in its transit, and then when there's nobody else to talk to through the rest of its journey of that sign, it goes void. So, for example, it's going to talk to Jupiter, which is in the middle of Cancer, tomorrow morning, and then go void. It makes other aspects that are not major aspects. It makes some minor aspects, but for all intents and purposes, it is void. And that means don't do anything new. Try not to, go for a job interview tomorrow. Like if you have to schedule something, schedule it for Tuesday. Don't do anything brand new tomorrow because it doesn't bode well. It's like planting your seeds in gravel. They don't take. The seeds don't take. So, when, as I'm talking about this, remember when something is moving toward the end of a sign and the moon talks to it, then we have less of a void moon time. We have a few minutes of void. We have an hour of void. We don't have an entire 22-hour period or all day void, because when there are things at the end of, like, Taurus, as Uranus has been, we get the moon talking to Uranus while it's in the journey, finishes, goes void, and then pops out of the void right away. But this is not the world we're in now. Now we're going to rely on the moon talking to inner planets a little more often when it's on its way out of a sign, And so it's meaningful to understand that the void periods are going to be longer than they have been in this last year or so, because there were always things at the end of signs. So it's not the case right now. So the good news is, like Thursday, once the moon goes into Scorpio, then we're in a period where there's been a shorter void moon. Like the void starts at 4:52 a.m. and then it ends when the moon goes into Scorpio at 3:02 p.m. So it's not the entire day. It's not all day, all night. And so that's helpful to us. And so we are moving into a full moon on Friday the 1st, and that's very interesting because it's at 11 degrees Scorpio and the sun is in Taurus, as you know, and that means that moon and sun are in opposition, and we are having this dynamic with those two creating the full moon, as we do every month. This is going to be a month of 2 full moons, the month of May. So that's Friday, May 1st. We have the first of 2 full moons. This is what we call a blue moon. The second one is a blue moon. So since we're having it on the 1st, and it's usually about a month before there's another full moon, it falls on the 31st of May. So this is very interesting. We're having the 1st and the 31st, the first day of May and the last day of May are full moons. And the first day of May will have the Scorpio full moon, and the last day of May will have a Sagittarius full moon. So that is really quite interesting. And I don't remember the last time we've had two full moons in a month. I know there were a couple of months where we had two new moons, but this is very strong. So May is a bit of an unusual month, and so we'll collect that extra. There's usually 13 full moons in a year, and there's 12 months in a year, so sometimes they overlap a little bit. So let's look at this full moon. This full moon is, in a sign that the moon doesn't love to be in. It's not its place of exaltation, it's its place of fall. And it's opposite the place of exaltation, which is the moon in Taurus. So this experience of moon in Scorpio is always intense and a little zesty. And so Friday, when we have this, the moon in Scorpio is going to be having already squared Pluto on Thursday, Scorpio's ruler, and then moves into this dynamic with the sun. And so this is something we really want to pay attention to, because we don't get a lot of Scorpio this time of year. Usually the moon passes through Scorpio every month and it's like a blip, and there's nothing in Scorpio really this time of year because it's not Scorpio season. It's Taurus season and getting into Gemini. So that full moon will happen at 1:23 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, we still have 5 planets in Aries, or 4 planets in Chiron. We still have Mars, the ruler of Scorpio, the co-ruler of Scorpio, as Pluto is ruler of Scorpio in the modern world. But we still have Mars in Aries where it belongs. So this, I think, is going to be very strong because Mars is in its home. It is co-ruler of the Scorpio moon, so I expect this to be a little powerful. And Mars and the moon, it's interesting. They're going to make an inconjunct. After the moon passes the full point, it will make an inconjunct to Mars, which is a needling aspect. I've mentioned it before here. But Mars is joined by Neptune and Saturn and Mercury and Chiron still in Aries. No more crossing the threshold. Okay, there's going to be no more planets passing over Neptune and Saturn. That whole mess of last week of Mercury being sandwiched between Mars and Saturn is over. Mercury has moved on. And ultimately, at the end of this week, on Saturday, the 2nd of May, Mercury will move into the sign of Taurus at 10:57 p.m. That's pretty late in the day. Late on Saturday night in the Eastern time zone, Mercury will enter Taurus. So Mercury's moved on, and that's a good thing. The less stellium we have, the less intense things are, and things will start to shake out. And remember now, Mercury is the ruler of where Uranus has entered. So we're watching Mercury and where it's going. And when we look at Uranus, it's disposed of by Mercury, and we need to pay attention to what Mercury is doing. So I expect that now that Uranus is in Gemini, once Mercury has its retrograde moments, it's probably going to be a little chaotic. But Mercury will move into Taurus, and then eventually, within a few weeks, move into its own sign of Gemini, and then we're going to see some interesting stuff once it meets up with Uranus, because I don't think it did that last year. I think that they have never met. So this is an interesting dynamic we're going to be looking out for. One of the other interesting dynamics I want to talk about is that, and I want to prepare you for it now, because we are having what I consider a quieter week, and it gives me the opportunity to tell you about something that's going to happen in July. In July, we are going to have an arrangement of all of these planets. Now, okay, so we know that Pluto went into Aquarius, and we know that Saturn and Neptune went into Aries, and we know now Uranus is in Gemini. So everybody's in their new place. And guess what? They're going to have a conversation all at the same time. Now, they're obviously already conversing on some level, but everybody's going to be at 4 degrees of that sign. Now, you know, in astrology, every sign is 30 degrees, right? But the fact that all of these planets are going to be at 4 degrees, Saturn won't be, but it'll be an interesting dynamic. By the time we get to July 21st, Uranus will be at 4 degrees Gemini. Pluto will be back at 4 degrees Aquarius because it will have retrograded. Neptune will be at 4 degrees Aries, and Jupiter will have already entered Leo and be at 4 degrees Leo. In that manner, all of those planets, those 4 of them, are going to be talking to one another. Saturn will be further along. But this is such an incredible, powerful relationship between all of them that it's a dynamic we haven't seen before in I don't know how long. Some people are saying 2,000 years. I don't know about that. But this is a lot of energy, everybody talking fairly nicely to one another. And ultimately what's going to happen is there's going to be a 5-pointed star when the moon goes into Libra on July 19th and hits 4 degrees. So this is a very dynamic place. Whenever I've had these 5-pointed stars happen, I have felt them tremendously, and it's an enormous amount of energy with everybody talking to each other. After the moon goes out of Libra and into Scorpio, those days, a couple days later, like the 21st or so of July, it will be also in a dynamic, but more of a square with Jupiter and Pluto. And then July 24th, it'll be in a dynamic with the moon in Sagittarius. And so this is something that we're going to be talking about and that we're going to be preparing for over these next months as these planets start to get in place and line up to speak to one another. This is fairly unheard of. And all of them at 4 degrees is almost never happening. Now, through the years, through the 20th century, Pluto and Neptune often were in this sextile, smooth relationship where, Pluto would be at 4 degrees of something or 10 degrees of something, and Neptune would be 2 signs away, 10 degrees, giving a wink to Pluto. And so we're going to have that again, but except now we've got 2 more planets involved, and one of them is another outer planet. So all the outer planets will be talking to each other, and they'll be bringing Jupiter in, and this is a dynamic that won't last all year, but they are beginning to line up to arrange this. I think that this is going to be highly significant in the collective world, the collective unconscious, in the collective world that we see every day, and in our personal world. These are very unusual times we are in, and we are going to see some very unusual astrology. And I want to just start making you aware of it because we're gearing up for this. Now that Uranus has made its transition into a new sign, these planets are all going to start getting together and arranging themselves into this little 5-pointed star that we're going to have at the end of July. More on that as we go through. But in the meantime, this week, we want to pay attention to what we feel has changed and shifted in our everyday life. Gemini is a sign of the everyday experience. It's your phone calls you make, your neighborhood, where you travel around locally, how your commute is, if you have to make a commute, what you need to do to get to work every day if you have to work outside of your home, what your everyday experience and your dialogues and your meetings and things represent and what they look like. Because Gemini is a sign of the everyday experience. It's also a sign of siblings, and I would say cousins as well. Not necessarily parents, but cousins, siblings, because cousins are almost like siblings in some families. And, sisters-in-law, brothers-in-law, all of those things. So what does that feel like with those people in your family? There may be dynamics that are changing. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to have Uranus going through the house of siblings, which is the 3rd house, but it might bring a new dimension to your relationships with your siblings. And we may see the rise of sibling relationships in culture. There may be, like there were groups, bands, for example, where it was like the Everly Brothers, and they had that sibling sound. There were the Wilson Brothers who created the Beach Boys. They had that sibling harmony sound. Uranus wasn't in Gemini then, though some of those people may have been born with Uranus in Gemini. So we may start to see more siblings and group activities in the world. We also may, as I said, connect with something different in a new dimension with our sibling relationships or our cousin relationships. They may be transformed in some way because Uranus is at its core transformational, just like Pluto, just like Neptune. It just has its own way of doing things. And Uranus, if you don't know this, Uranus in the heavens does not spin in the same direction as all the other planets. Everybody revolves around the sun in a horizontal way. They're moving horizontally. Their spin is horizontal. It's on the horizon. Uranus's is not. Uranus was hit with something thousands of years ago, or maybe millions of years ago. I don't remember. I watched a program on this many, many years ago. But Uranus turns vertically. Uranus is on its side spinning. And it was hit with an asteroid. That's the belief. Like, nobody was documenting science at that time. So Uranus is on its side spinning, and its moons spin in that vertical way. So this is typical of Uranus's energy. Uranus is the contrarian. Uranus is not always a planet that agrees with everybody else and causes a disruption in just its existence, So as the other planets are going around the sun, there's Uranus spinning in a vertical way, up and down rather, some like back and forth on its in a horizontal way. So I think that's interesting. That says a lot about Uranus's energy and its personality. Uranus is a disruptor. Uranus is an awakener. It allows us to see things differently. It liberates what is old and rigid and stuck. So if you feel certain areas of your life are stuck, Uranus is here to wake it all up in Gemini. Now, it's an interesting dynamic because obviously Uranus changes signs, and it changed signs in 2018 and went into Taurus. But Taurus is more of an area of everybody's chart where we may have been in habit. And Uranus came in and said, okay, I'm getting you out of that habit, and your habits are going to change, and we need to change some things about your habitual goings on in this area of your chart. Now, it may have been your fourth house, your family. It could have been in your seventh house, your personal relationships. It could have been in your career house, your 10th house, when it was in Taurus. But Taurus has a tendency to get very rooted because it's an earth sign, and it's often, I don't want to say stuck, but complacent. And things are just fine the way they are. Whereas with Gemini, we're looking for changes there. We're looking for other opportunities, other avenues. This is why I was saying Venus is flirty there. She's looking around. She may be having you on her arm, but her gaze is around the room. She may be on your arm, Venus in Gemini, but she's still got one eye open to who else is around. And so with Uranus there, it's not going to be digging up the roots the way it did in Taurus and like unsticking you, pulling you out of, what you were firmly rooted in. It's going to be presenting other options. And so we want to keep our eyes wide open for the other options, for lots of fluidity. And, not that Uranus is unfluid in Taurus. It was just doing a lot of excavation of what was no longer working, or where you may have felt complacent. There's that word again. Where you felt, okay, I'm just doing this and I'm on autopilot, and it takes away from the autopilot when it goes into Gemini. Now it's like maybe, and signs are in the order that they're in for a reason. Maybe Uranus and Taurus needed to pull us out of the roots of our complacency to help us see the other opportunities that are coming our way when it steps into Gemini, as it has done. It's interesting because I think that financially things got really sticky in the month of April, and maybe your business was slow, maybe your whatever you were doing financially was slow, maybe things were not as flowing as they had been financially, because Taurus is about money. And, you're waiting for money to come in, your clients haven't paid you, etc., etc. And that is often something at the end of Taurus. And it could have been Jupiter, could have been anybody, but Uranus, particularly because it's a big outer planet. And that experience of things sticking the way they did in this last month, it's like trying to move through oatmeal, cooked oatmeal, not like oatmeal in the bag before you boil it. But this is, we're trying to move through the oatmeal, which feels very Taurus to me. It's earthy, it's a grain, oats. And so it's been a very sticky time, I think, and things were like holding on. The grip was strong financially. So I think that, and there's been a lot of talk here because the colon is very strong here now in Costa Rica, and the dollar is not. And so watching the dollar get very weak has been difficult for those of us who get paid in dollars. And I have friends who work for American companies. They're Costa Rican, but they work for American companies here. And that doesn't suit them when they have to pay for things in colones. So we're watching the currency exchange be a little wonky here. And then there's been a lot of talk of this. And it doesn't help tourism in Costa Rica. It doesn't help those of us earning in dollars. It doesn't help the economy in general. And so I think that there's been some conversations telling Costa Rica to get it together as far as the colon is concerned. So I expect with Mercury going into Taurus, there's going to be conversations about, currency exchange, and hopefully things will get sorted out, especially here. But I think that the dollar has been complicated elsewhere as well. So this is very interesting. As we see things leave Taurus, big things leave Taurus, they are opening up a door to something else. And wherever you have Taurus in your chart, you're getting some relief from Uranus plowing through there the last 7-8 years, and then moving into the next sector of your chart, Gemini. So we've got now Uranus in Gemini, we've got Venus in Gemini, so things are going to be, a little lighter and a little different. I do expect the Scorpio moon to be, the full moon this week, to be a bit plotting, because that's a dense, intense fixed sign, and those are fixed signs. That's a fixed full moon. So one of the things that's important during a Scorpio moon is to be with your feelings. It's a water sign. Be with your emotions. Allow what needs to come up to surface, and don't keep secrets. Don't keep secrets from yourself, and just stay with the feelings that you have and let them work themselves through. So just be aware of that. Be aware of how you're feeling and don't deny it. Okay. I am available for having a session. If you'd like an astrology session with me, click book online on my website, thegoldenastrologer.com, and we can set up Reiki. We can set up emotional clearing, astrology, card readings. I love my alchemy cards and archetype cards. And also you can come to me for expansion mentoring if you'd like to work with me more longer term, and we can do all of the work through all the different tools I have in my toolbox, which are many. I also have my new vision system if you'd like an emotional clearing, and I welcome you into my world. So if you'd like to watch me during the week, I'm on Instagram, The Golden Astrologer, and certainly reach out to me, deb@debmcbride.com, info@thegoldenastrologer.com, to tell me your experience of Uranus and Gemini. What does this feel like so far to you? And let me know your thoughts. And certainly if you have questions, reach out to me. Thank you so much for listening. Many blessings to each and every one of you. Happy full moon. Happy Uranus and Gemini. Let's see what rock and roll shows up this week. And I wish you a gorgeous week. Beautiful things. I hope they happen for you with this nice Venus-Pluto trine. And enjoy the full moon. Many blessings. Much gratitude. Have a beautiful week.